been dying recently, but I just...
Good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, November the 4th, and this is a regular Moscow City Council meeting. Welcome, everybody. Jim?
Would you all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, first thing on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda.
Move to approve as presented, sir.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Jim and a second by Catherine to approve the consent agenda as it is stated. I'll start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay. The next thing, staff recognition report. Gary, do we have anything this evening, sir?
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Okay, item number 3, mayor's appointments. I have none this evening. So we will move into item number 4, which is public comment and mayor's response period. We'll allow 15 minutes for each one of our council meetings for this. And as long as there isn't things discussed on this evening's agenda, or planning and zoning, or board of adjustments, or of a political nature, unless you want to just remind us all to vote tomorrow. So with that, I'd be willing to have somebody come up and address us, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Hello, Dulcie. Please state your name.
Good evening. Dulcie Kirsting-Lark, 803 East 8th Street in Moscow. I'm also the executive director of the Latah County Historical Society, which is the purpose of why I'm here today. And so good evening, Mayor Lambert and council members and City Supervisor Riedner and city staff, everyone in the audience. So as the director of the Historical Society, I had the opportunity to oversee a really wonderful project this summer that was a necessary infrastructure improvement to the McConnell Mansion, which is one of just 2 museums in Moscow. It serves all of Latah County, but it's obviously a biggest asset to Latah County, or pardon me, to Moscow residents. This is a picture of the McConnell Mansion's roof from the summer of 2018. This was taken at our annual ice cream social, which the city is always very kind enough to waive city fees permits for, and I'm very grateful for that. But we were in desperate need of a new roof, and so over the course of this past summer, we were able to put a beautiful new roof on this 1886 home and historic house museum, and certainly we could not have done that without the support of the city of Moscow. It was a combined project between Latah County, between the city of Moscow and the Latah County Historical Society, with a significant investment from the Idaho Heritage Trust, a nonprofit that serves the entire state for preservation needs. So you can see that we had a total roof system replacement. We had new shingles put on. They are commercial grade, they're not residential grade. So to give you just a little bit of perspective, the typical residential grade shingle weighs about 225 pounds per square, which is 10 feet by 10 feet. But these shingles weigh 435 pounds per square. So they're nearly double the weight of a traditional residential shingle, which is one of the reasons why it was an expensive project. We were also able to put Armor Light on the top of the house, and any of the flat roofs you see. Armor Light is the same product that covers our beloved Kibbe Dome, and both of these products have lifetime warranties. And finally, you'll see a decorative ridge comb has been added to the 3 steep gables, and that was a custom-made piece. It was actually cut here in Moscow out of aluminum. They're 15-foot sections, and then they were powder-coated, and those were, like I said, produced locally. So we're really proud of this project. I have been telling people that I plan to be long gone, like dead, by the time this needs to be done again, and I hope that is very much the case. And while I was here, I just wanted to share with you that we also just completed a really wonderful project, the Smithsonian Museum on Main Street. We had over 1,000 adults visit, over 600 children visit, and we had nearly 24 school tours of the exhibit while I was here for 6 weeks. So we were really proud of that, and really thankful to the Chamber of Commerce and to the City of Moscow and everybody who showed us a lot of support in that. So I'm just here to say thank you, and to give you a couple updates on some of our projects. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dulcie, and the McConnell Mansion is one of the jewels that we have in our fine town here.
I appreciate those kind words. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi.
Mayor Lambert, council members. My name is Jason Yearman. I'm the director for military and veteran services at the University of Idaho. Position I just assumed last summer after I retired from the Army after 20 years. I graduated from the U of I, so it's like coming back home. I handed out for each of you a flyer, and that's the reason I'm here tonight, is Monday evening next week, on November 11th, which is Veterans Day, we're having a Veterans Appreciation Dinner over at the Pittman Center at the University of Idaho. This is a cooperative effort between us and the Chamber of Commerce, and a tremendous amount of support from them, as well as our local businesses, mostly veteran-owned, that have donated goods and services in support of this. So examples being all of the beer, the wine, the coffee are donated from local businesses from Genesee North, to include services such as Inland Northwest Broadcasting that have been a big supporter in helping to advertise. We have quite a few people that have RSVP'd already. I think we're up to about 300. It should be a great event. Some of the speakers that you'll see there will be Don Burnett will be giving the university welcome. He's Dean of the College of Law, was interim president for the University of Idaho. He's also a retired colonel from the United States Army in the JAG Corps. Nikki Woodland will be giving the POW MIA address. Her father was a POW during Vietnam. The keynote speaker that we'll have on Monday night will be Major General Eric Peterson. He's a graduate from the University of Idaho, and he's on active duty right now, serving at the Pentagon. He just finished up a division command, so that's a big step for him to go from that on up to the Pentagon. So his career is continuing, and he's a fantastic speaker and a huge proponent for the university. So it's free to veterans and guests, and through generous donations, we've been able to keep the price down for everybody else down to $20 a ticket. So if you're interested, I've left a couple small flyers over there. I'll leave them on the chair if you want to grab one on your way out. But also if you just want to search for Eventbrite and Military Appreciation Dinner here in Moscow, that'll take you to the link where you can RSVP. So thank you very much for your time.
Jason, and that's Monday night, the 11th.
Yes, sir.
I will be there. Kathy and I will be there. I'm
Wonderful.
proud to be there because our veterans are very, very huge for not only our nation, but it doesn't matter if it's a nation or a state or a city. And it's a fun event. I've been to I don't know how many of these things, and I always have a really good time. So I'm looking forward to the conversations and the speeches. And, of course, Don Burnett, there's a guy that, I'll tell you what, I learned something. I try to rub shoulders with that guy as many times as possible because I learned something from him every single time. He is something else. He's a really amazing man. So,
Sure is.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Hi, my name is Eric Engelbretson, and I live on Howard Street over by East City Park. I just wanted to make a comment. I wanted to give you an analogy to help with my comment. If you just imagine for a minute, imagine that you had a staircase. As you walked in the front door of your house, you had a staircase, very visible. You used it every day, and the stairs were basically falling apart, had cracks and holes, and it was sketchy every time you walked up and down, and it made your house look kind of shabby. And then but what you realized was that was dangerous, as somebody could actually step on one of the cracks and fall and get hurt. And so you hired a company to come and paint it. To fix the stairs, completely fix them. And you come home the day after they've been fixed, and the company just put a coat of paint on them and left them exactly the way they were, every bit as dangerous and ugly, but just with a new coat of paint on them. And that's what I feel like has been done to some of our streets. First Street, if you can imagine driving on First Street from Russell School down the hill to Washington, that was one of the worst places in our streets for huge cracks and holes. And it was getting really, really dangerous. And for years, people were saying, we got to get that fixed. And so the city spent money, got it fixed. And we were also excited because it was dangerous riding bicycles. I drive my car on it every day. It's seriously bumpy. I had an exchange student from Honduras ride up that street with me, and he said, our roads are better in Honduras. And it's actually very dangerous. It was. And then they fixed the streets, and we spent the money, and they put down the chip coat that they put down. And now you drive up the street, I would encourage you all to do so and think about it as you drive up it. It is absolutely the same as it was before, but with a little quarter-inch coat of gunk on it. The holes are, every hole, every crack is still there. And I've got pictures here if anybody, I thought I could pass some of these out if you'd like to see. But I just encourage you to drive on it. And because when I gave you the analogy of your home being fixed, how would you feel if you came back and you'd spent a bunch of money for a contractor to fix the stairs and he didn't? Would you feel violated? Would you feel kind of like taken advantage of, like your money was wasted? What would you do? You'd just simply have the company come back and redo it and do it right. And I just wanted to, that's the way I feel when I drive on it every day. And it's sad because it's right in front of the library, the public library. We have lots of guests, all kinds of guests from all over that drive there. Russell School's right there. They drive up and down all day. And it'd be one thing if it was purely aesthetic, but it's literally dangerous. If someone getting out of their car steps in one of those cracks or holes, they could fall down, hurt themselves. Someone on a bicycle could have their front tire fall in a crack or a hole, and they could literally go into the path of an oncoming car just because of the streets. I mean, somebody could get hurt to the point where they sued the city for more than it costs to repair the entire streets. So I just kind of wanted to mention that and show you some pictures. And I just, as a citizen, I feel like my tax money was wasted. And the part that
Eric, you want to wrap it up, please?
oh, yeah,
And
sorry.
you can give the pictures over here to our city clerk.
Okay.
We'd be more than
Yeah, the part that made me, I realized if I'd have had a bag of Quikrete, so $3 bags of Quikrete in 2 hours, I could have gone up and down the street, filled those cracks and holes before they put the chip coat seal on, and it would have been flat as a ice rink. But they didn't do anything except cover up the hole. I mean,
One thing I'll say about our streets over the last 6 or 7 years, in our city budget, we've added money every single year to our city streets and what we've done with our city streets. And look, they're not perfect, absolutely not. Will they ever be perfect? Absolutely not. They won't happen that way. But one of the things that we will be doing is we continue to work on them year after year, day after day. And we've got actually a pretty good system set up for the chip coating and the slurry sealing, which you were referring to. And that has really helped the longevity of life of a lot of our streets. Now, are they perfect? Absolutely not. Will we continue to work on it? Absolutely. And we'll get there where we need to be.
I talked with Steve Schulte about it, the streets guy. He was fantastic,
Yeah.
really good to talk to. But he said that coat that they put on, that'll be there for 10 or 20 years. And that means those exact same cracks that were there before it was fixed will be there for another 10 or 20
Well,
years.
maybe it will, maybe it won't. I'm not going to debate that. Okay, I'd like to hear some other folks. You want to come up?
Good evening, Mayor Lambert, city council members, city staff, as well as the audience. My name is Jenny Ford. I serve as the executive director at the Moscow Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center, and I live at 1024 Granford Drive. I am here to let you know that our Leadership Moscow class of 2019 and 2020 is part of your audience tonight, and we greatly appreciate the support of the City of Moscow when it comes to participants as well as participating in the actual class. It's an 8-month course, and there is a full City of Moscow day that we participate in, and that's coming up next week. And so we thought it was very important for them to be here tonight and to see how you all function every other Monday evening. So I wanted to just point out the folks that are in the audience. We have 20 students this cohort, and 10 of them are here. Dulcie Kirsting-Lark, Stephanie Allen, Joel Cohen, Perry Shove, Marcy Williams, Meredith Metzger, Ben Amen, Hope Eifert, Megan Cherry, and Evan Timar.
All 10 of you, please stand up so we can see who you are. Good. Awesome. Thank you.
And I stand for questions or any comments that you may have.
Well, the leadership program that the Chamber's been put on, it seems like every year it gets just a little bit better and better, and we refined it. What is this, the 4th year now? And so, and it's something that's really terrific for our whole area, Jenny, so.
Yeah, Mayor Lambert has received, as well as City Supervisor Gary Wiener, the Friend of Leadership Moscow Award. We really appreciate your support. And after this year, we will graduate almost 60 students.
That'll be neat, and for the 10 out of the 20 that are here, you're gonna get a chance to see me talk to you, because they're giving me some time to talk about leadership, so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Questions for Jenny, from me? Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will move on. Okay, we're going to go to item number 5, which is the commission report. We have the Moscow Tree Commission with us. We've got David Schott and Daniel Cronin as well, so welcome.
Well, good evening, Mayor Lambert, members of council. It's my pleasure to introduce Dan Cronin tonight. He's going to be given the annual Tree Commission report. Daniel is an assistant professor of landscape architecture at the University of Idaho. He also serves as a research associate with the Center for Resilient Communities. He has focused on research and practice at multiple locations and scales, including projects in China, Turkey, the U.S. Pacific Northwest, and the Gulf Coast. His current research contributes to landscape architecture and landscape planning, stormwater management, and a systematic analytical approach to research known as alternative futures. He's been a resident of Moscow for 2 years, and he's been a pleasure to serve with on the Tree Commission for the last year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Daniel Cronin.
Hello, Daniel.
Hey, hello. Hello. Thank you, David, for the great introduction. That could have been the best introduction I've ever had, so thank you. Usually it's like, hey, and then this guy, but thank you so much. So like David was saying, I'm originally, I've served for a lot of landscape architecture projects in the South, specifically in Louisiana. And just to comment to Eric, Mr. Eric's comment, we refer to potholes as basements because we're 5 feet below sea level. So yeah, common everywhere, really. So let's jump into this, and we're going to talk about the Tree Commission and what we've done over the past year. Also, it's been a pleasure to serve on the Tree Commission for the city of Moscow. It's been an amazing experience. So members of the Tree Commission, we have our chair, Debbie Cadlack, and then also the vice chair, Clark Phillip, Mary Jo Hamilton as the secretary, David Rock, and myself, and then Lauren Goss as commissioners. So present tonight, we also have Clark and then David Rock as well here in the audience. Our liaison, Gina Terrastura, and then and David Schott is our staff liaison, Donna Howard as the secretary. So it's been a pleasure working with all these guys over the past years. And we have some pretty interesting projects that we have in the mix going, and we'll talk about it a little bit. So as a mission statement, essentially what we're framing is the purpose of the Tree Commission is to plan, establish, and help conduct a comprehensive community forestry program, and we'll define that here in a second, for the city of Moscow. By ensuring safe, healthy trees, the community forestry program will enhance the quality of life for all that live, work, and visit the city of Moscow. So kind of to talk off of that just for a second, we talk about green infrastructure a lot of the times, and it's a value-latent term, but essentially what we're doing is we're bolstering the natural capital or ecosystem services. Choose or put in the buzzword of your choice for that particular part of the definition of green infrastructure. But essentially what that does is helps to frame the stepping stones of habitat, the original definition of green infrastructure for habitat, but also natural capital, albedo effect, and a lot of different various opportunities, reducing energy demand, water conservation, stormwater mitigation. The list goes on and on of why we can use this bit of green infrastructure effectively throughout our system. The way that we do it as a Tree Commission is by ensuring that we're prioritizing healthy trees. So essentially, we reframed the goals over the Tree Commission goals over the past year in the category 1 to promote education and public relations. And some items underneath that were to develop a map and a data set of large and unique historic trees or specimens or legacy trees. They go by a lot of different things in different cities. So right now we have a current GIS database, and we're updating that through a lot of revisions to make sure that we can quantify and qualify a lot of these specimens all over our city to ensure our natural capital. Let's see, so offer public workshops, and then we'll talk about that in a second, and sponsor annual and special community events such as Arbor Day. Create partnerships. That's something that we're trying to work with the university, and I think we're doing it pretty well because I'm here right now, but also to look at ways that we can enhance the community members' response, and then also through graduate student projects, for example. And we'll talk about that with the park that we have going right now. Increase tree planting and maintenance efforts, and then mitigate effects of climate change on the local environment. Let's see, so let's talk a little bit about some of the events. First off the bat, if you notice here, it turns out that Mayor Lambert's only 26 years old. I don't know.
Well,
how that happened.
that's a lie. So. But thank you very much.
At the tree event, or at Arbor Day, Clark Phillip gave us a great presentation where he explained kind of the benefits of why we plant trees in our city and our urban fabric. We put in a ginkgo biloba at the street tree. You know, kids sang a song and then also did a quick kind of like presentation about what they learned through a set of drawings over the past year. So that was pretty cool just to see that. And then also Dr. Brown gave a presentation from Gritman about some of his work and the effects of tree health, or health of trees. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. So another event was the Farmers Day Market Table Sessions, where we had two, one May the 4th and then also October the 5th, where we gave away seedlings, the bristlecone pine, Saskatoon serviceberry, and then also the Rocky Mountain maple. We presented topics about the seedlings themselves, tree selection guides, literature, and then also just pretty much pointing people in the right direction to paperless digital references where they could look to the website to find those information or bits of information. Really fun to do. I mean, I thought it was a great experience. One, to talk to David and Clark for a couple hours, but also to meet with a lot of people from the community and the public and just explain the efficacy of using this green infrastructure piece. There's also the second annual community involvement fair. This is not a picture from that. It was the quickest or the fastest one that I could find. The other one was a wedding from the 1912 Center. So I decided to go with this because tables were there. So it was also a great event to see what else people are doing in the city in terms of young entrepreneurs and other people that are involved in the community, in community service. We've also hosted some workshops. There's one in the mix. This one sounds amazing. Trees of Moscow Mountain, a guide ski tour, so a cross-country ski tour that Clark's putting on. I'm going to go. I'm going to fall a lot, but I'm definitely going to this one. I mean, what a great way to identify trees and go and check out nature and essentially see what those trees and those specimens look like in their natural habitat rather than just from a sidewalk. Also pruning workshops, which are, I still haven't gone to these yet, but I can't wait to go. And the other tree planting best practices are planting with native trees in the Palouse that David Griffith and myself have put on once now. And then the next one that's coming up is with Iris Mays, where we're looking at suitability and how to maintain and how to actually design specific areas with native vegetation in mind. So the first part of that is driven towards the theoretical piece, identifying plants. Second part, mostly driven towards design and implementation. The other project that is going on, which is, there could almost be a commission for this in itself, but this is for the Edible Food Forest Park, which is officially named Harvest Park. David Schott's been the liaison and the guide and everything for this project, actually. So it's been a great experience working with him and looking for ways to best design this particular chunk of land, right? To convert it over from agriculture to natural capital in terms of a park. So this is formerly a wheat field, and has some sheer slopes in terms of how drainage is going to work for the site, but it's been an interesting project to see what versions of that could look like in the future, specifically geared around the concept of an edible food forest. This past weekend, I was telling David earlier that I took a trip, me and my wife took a trip to Seattle, and we looked at other precedents of Beacon Hill, for example, to see how their edible food forest is operating as a case study kind of a report to see how spaces were divided, how stormwater management works, and the synergies that they created with the university and other service members. That went through an iterative approach through a landscape architecture firm out of Spokane, Bernardo Wills, and then also a lot of the commissioners served to help guide those charrettes. Charrettes are essentially tabling sessions where you have printouts laid out, and then you can write notes and things like that with markers or trace paper over the overlays. We guided a lot of those to come up with the best solutions possible from a program or a set list of where things can actually go in this park. What are the plant guilds going to look like? What are these areas that are going to help out the community? Where could someone go to walk their dog? Should we not let people walk their dog? Things like that. So it was a pretty interesting set of iterative revisions to an initial plan or initial draft. And this is essentially where we are right now in terms of what that design is going to look like for this particular park. Again, this is in full build-out mode. It's also will work in iterations, and also a lot of phases. But essentially, we have a plan for the park now, and it's been great to contribute to that with David's help and guidance and everything. So I'll let it go from there. And then thank you so much for allowing me to serve for the city of Moscow. It's been a great experience. Any questions?
Daniel, a couple of things. The Arbor Day celebration is always a fun event, especially planting a tree with a bunch of kids and teaching them how to do that. I always very much enjoy that. And those Rocky Mountain maples, I took 2 of those. I planted a couple of those this spring.
Nice.
I'm very excited about them, see how they grow and stuff. And
They're doing
their
okay?
climate.
Are they doing okay?
Yeah, they're doing fine. So far, I haven't killed them, so that's a good thing. So I think they'll be just fine. But the work that the Tree Commission does is absolutely fantastic. And this edible forest came to fruition as we're moving along. It's just something that's going to be wonderful for our town. So we're all looking forward to it. Does anybody have questions for Daniel?
I have a quick question.
Randy.
You mentioned the, inventory of some of the legacy trees, or what is that something that will eventually be available, how to look at?
So should I mention the tree walks, or should I hold off?
Yeah.
So one idea, and we're spitballing what that could potentially look like in the future. But we came up with this idea of potentially having tree walks, right? Walking through, or areas where people could walk through legacies, or tree alleys with especially interesting fall color, just to promote health, but vetted through the public and public safety. So that database can almost be transferred through an app, for example, really easily. I kind of put up a mock-up together, and it didn't take long at all, but it's going to be important to update that database so people can see what the outputs are looking like. A lot of cities do it in both forms of media. Some cities do it paperless, some cities just do it like via app, and then some cities do it with small brochures. So I think initially as a pilot, maybe both, but it's still in the works. Probably
So like a walking tour where you would identify these significant trees?
not a
perhaps?
tour, but self-guided tour.
Right,
We'll call it
yes,
that.
yes, exactly. That sounds
We're still
very cool.
framing what that'll look
Yeah.
like, but, some
That's a
people
great
call it a
idea.
heritage tree program, or, big mature trees, or a specimen
Yeah.
tree, these type of programs get people out looking at trees and that type of stuff.
Okay, other questions? Well, thank you, Daniel and David,
Thank you.
for a nice report. Okay, we will move on to item number 6, Idaho Department of Commerce Opportunity Fund Agreement. Bill Belknap will present this evening. Hello, Bill.
Oh, that one's still up.
Good evening.
Good evening again. So recently, during MZ's competitive corporate headquarters site selection process, and MZ was looking at locations both within the state of Idaho and the state of Washington, the state of Idaho offered a number of financial incentives to ensure that MZ stayed a Idaho company. One of those incentives was a contribution from the state's Opportunity Fund, which is a program that's largely at the discretion of the Director of the State Department of Commerce to assist with necessary public infrastructure improvements associated with economic development projects. It's very similar to a community development block grant or a rural community development block grant, where there are funds that cities and counties can apply for, other public entities can apply for to assist with public infrastructure with economic development efforts. The only difference in this one is that this is solely at the discretion of the Department of Commerce Director. Within that program, the funding must be received by a public entity who then in turn reimburses the company for approved public improvement expenses. So as a result, this incentive requires two separate agreements, one between the city and the state, to detail the process by which the city will request funding for reimbursement of those improvements, and then what documentation the city will provide to the state, and one between the city and the company that establishes, again, the same improvements, the process for the reimbursement, and the milestones for when those funds will be dispersed. The funding in this particular project is proposed to be utilized for the relocation of Hog Creek. We have a 42-inch diameter storm culvert that crosses that site diagonally right through the building footprint. So it needs to be repositioned on the site to be moved to the northern edge and to the western edge of the property, as well as for sidewalk improvements around the perimeter of the site, including 10-foot wide sidewalks, street trees, street grates, and decorative light fixtures, a similar streetscape to what we've done recently in the downtown and Legacy Crossing area. The estimated total cost of those public improvements is a little over $700,000. Again, this would reimburse that $350,000, and then the remainder would be covered by the company. So in this image, because of shape, north is to the right of the screen. So this is C Street located here, Almond Street on the top, A Street here on the south, and then Jackson Street here on the bottom of the slide. So this is location of the building. Hog Creek currently goes straight through the property to from a manhole here to a manhole at the site. So that'll be intercepted, rerouted around the north edge, cut the corner here, then work down the western edge of the property, and then rejoin the storm system from there forward. And then you can kind of see the illustration of those perimeter sidewalk improvements. These are actually tree wells, street trees and tree grates, and decorative light fixtures around the perimeter of the site. And this is just an illustration rendering of that project and the building that will be completed as part of that. The $350,000, as I mentioned, is proposed to be dispersed in 4 equal installments upon the achievement of 4 milestones. The first of which is the completion and acceptance of the Hog Creek relocation, so that's the large portion there. The second milestone is the issuance of building permits and commencements of construction of the building. The third milestone will then be completion of construction and the receipt of the certificate of occupancy for the building. And then the final milestone is the creation of 27 new jobs by the company. You'll see that there are a couple of different job numbers that are referenced in the agreement. In the background section on both of them, it makes reference to the company creating 127 jobs. That is the total job creation that the company has committed to the state for other incentives. For this particular incentive package, it is only 27 jobs. And then you'll see that the milestone language itself references a creation of 27 jobs above and beyond the current employment of 126 positions as of January 31st of this year. That was the time at which they were making the application and going through that site selection process. So that date is the baseline according to the state, and any job creation is measured from that point. So it'll be roughly a little over $87,000 dispersed in each of those 4 milestones once they're completed. Documentation is then provided to the city to confirm that the milestone's been completed and that this is a reimbursement basis, so they have to expend funds to complete those improvements and then request reimbursement for a portion of those expenses. So as I mentioned, they'll expend those funds towards those improvements, provide us that supporting documentation, and achieve the milestones before that disbursement would occur. The city would then submit those requests to the state for reimbursement, and the timing that we have set forth in the 2 agreements
Essentially, the state will reimburse us within 30 days of the request, and we have to reimburse the company within 45 days. The goal here is just to cycle the funds through, and the city does not have to have monies outstanding. The city's only obligation under these agreements is the staff time to process and reimbursement request and act essentially as a sponsor for this project and for this incentive. We have prepared the required agreements for review and approval by the City Council. This was reviewed by the Public Works Finance Committee on October 28th, at which time the committee recommended approval of the agreements, and staff recommends approval of the agreements as presented. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Bill? This is, I know one thing, I'll make a comment here. It's not necessarily a question, but this is an absolute perfect example of how the Idaho Department of Commerce Opportunity Fund agreements work. And I think, as the mayor of this city, it's an absolutely terrific thing. MZ is keeping their headquarters here, which is a big deal for us. We know that eventually there's going to be 500 employees there. So it's going to supersede that 27 by, tenfold or more. And so that's pretty exciting, and that's a good thing for this town. That's an excellent type of a business that we need to keep cultivating in our town. So just wanted to throw that out there for us. Brandy?
Do you know, does the Idaho Opportunity Fund, is this, in this case, it's specific to retaining businesses that are in the state? Do they also have some mechanism for attracting out-of-state?
So all the same incentives, whether it's TRI or Opportunity Fund, are used both for job retention as well as recruitment efforts. So they're eligible for both kinds of projects.
I have a question. I was kind of curious at how they found the grant, and as community development director, did you help them kind of look at the waters of all the state grant opportunities?
In this case, they actually had a site selection company working on their behalf that contacted both the state of Idaho and state of Washington to look at the potential opportunities for locations and incentives that could be offered to the company. We then were contacted by the State Department of Commerce. We created kind of our local team to work through the project, identify locations, and assist with that. The state has very qualified staff to address and present the state incentive packages, but we had to act as a sponsor, and they did request that we do that. But we worked as a team on the project as a whole, but the state was certainly well aware of the incentives that they were available, and they did provide all that information.
That's good to know. And then when was the last time we've had this kind of incentive happen here in Moscow? Has it been in the recent past?
For the Opportunity Fund?
Yeah.
This is the first time. This is a relatively new program. I think it was created about 3 or 4 years ago. And so the state was feeling like they were not competitive with surrounding states like Utah and others with incentive offerings. So they did develop an enhanced portfolio of incentives, and this Opportunity Fund is a new one. We have gone through two other site selection efforts where the state has made similar types of offers. Those projects didn't come to fruition, but this is the first time we've actually had an Opportunity Fund disbursement being made in the community.
Thank you.
One other.
Hey, Brandy?
I would imagine that city governments are quite frequently the public entity that the money passes through. Is that?
It would either be a city or a county would be the two
Okay.
likely, depending upon the situation. If it was a manufacturing or a dairy facility that was in a rural area, it very likely would be a county that would be the recipient of the funds. But if it was in an urbanized area or in a city corporate limits, then likely the city would be the sponsor. In this particular, all of the state's incentives do require local match. Whether it's the tax reimbursement or TRI program or the Opportunity Fund, that local match is actually being furnished by the county and the property tax abatement that was provided to the company. So that is what is the form of local match. So there is no local match required of the city.
Okay.
Well, with that, I'd like to move to approve the Opportunity Fund agreement.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Catherine and a second by Jim to approve the Opportunity Fund agreement. We'll start with you, Catherine.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Bill. Item number 7, Idaho Department of Environmental Quality Domestic Water System Loan Offer Phase 2. Bill Belknap, you have this one as well, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. In 2014, the city pursued and received judicial confirmation granting the city the authority to issue revenue bonds to finance a number of necessary improvements to the city's domestic water system. The city completed our comprehensive water system plan in 2012, and through that study, we identified a number of deficiencies in the system, both with fire flow as well as redundancy of water supply. So the improvements that were identified that were necessary to address those most significant deficiencies were the reconstruction of 6 water booster stations that were previously only sized for domestic flow and did not have pumps that were sized to accommodate fire flow demands. The development of a new domestic well that would allow us to have redundancy in water supply such that our highest producing well could be removed offline and we can meet demands. That was really identified as being addressed through the drilling of well number 10, and the construction of some limited piping systems related to both the well and booster in order to convey the water and to address the water coming from the booster stations. Those were necessary to meet DEQ system requirements, both for fire flow and redundancy of source, and the court determined that these were ordinary and necessary improvements that did allow the city to incur debt and issue bonds without requiring an election to do so. On June of 2014, the council accepted a loan offer from the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality of $4.3 million from the revolving loan fund. The terms offered under that loan were an interest rate of 2.25% and a 20-year repayment term. At that point in time, $4.3 million was an early estimate of the cost of those projects. The drilling of well 10 was completed in December of 2016, and then we began construction on the booster stations in April of 2017. The well 10 was completed at that time in December, but we have not completely developed the wells. That was just actually drilling the well itself. We have not installed the pump, the well house, the controls, or the backup power generation. The booster stations, we started on 3 of the 6 that were identified. Those are nearing completion at this point in time. We're just down to a few punch list items on that project, and we anticipate those will be wrapped up here in the next 30 days. That would leave the remaining system improvements to include the reconstruction of 2 additional booster stations. I mentioned 2 because initially we had 6, and through the design efforts on phase 1 and the first 3 booster stations, we identified that we could eliminate 1 booster station and tie 2 high-pressure zones together. So the Vista Station up on Weymouth was constructed to be able to feed both the upper booster station there, as well as replace the Mosier Station over on Mosier Street. So we have 2 remaining booster stations to reconstruct, and we have the development of well number 10 and the construction of about 3,400 feet of water main in the Indian Hills area to be able to receive the flow coming from the to-be reconstructed Indian Hills booster station. At this point in time, we've utilized nearly all the $4.3 million of the initial DEQ loan to fund the improvements that have been completed so far to date. Both those estimates were from 2010 early on, and we've seen increased escalation in construction costs across all trades, and so those projects have increased considerably. We are estimating the remaining improvements are anticipated to cost an additional $6.8 million to complete. Through our budgetary process for this fiscal year, the city has approximately $5.3 million that we've accumulated in the Water Capital Fund, and that is inadequate to fund the remaining improvements. And in addition, if we were to accumulate funding for another year or 2, would leave the Water Capital Fund with limited to no funding to address other system needs that do exist. DEQ has offered to issue an additional $4.3 million to the city under the same terms and conditions as the initial loan offer. We would close out this initial phase so that we would stop accruing construction interest and we begin repayment on the first $4.3 million loan in 2020. If we accepted the Phase 2 funding, then we would complete Well 10 and the Indian Hills water main in 2020 and construct the 2 booster stations in 2021. We would then close out the loan probably in late 2022 or early 2023 and begin repayment on that loan funding. Now, since the committee review on the 28th at the Public Works Finance Committee, we became aware the City of Lewiston did receive a slightly lower interest rate of 1.5% as a disadvantaged community. That did cause us to inquire of DEQ of the reason why they were receiving that reduced rate. And essentially, DEQ has a standard by which if that utilities rate, the annual average utility bill for that utility exceeds 1.5% of the annual median income, then you're considered to be this disadvantaged community and you can qualify for a lower interest rate. At the time the city made the application for this loan in 2014, that wasn't the case. The average water bill was just a little over $30 per month, and that did not exceed 1.5% of the annual median household income at that point in time. However, in 2012, when we wrapped up the water system study, it was projecting we would need to increase our water rates by over 33% in order to meet the infrastructure needs. And in 2013, we initiated a rate study that had even higher rate increases forecast for then the following 5 years in order to accumulate the funding necessary to make the system improvements. So while we did not meet that standard at that point in time, we certainly do today. So our average water bill is probably just right around 2% of the annual median household income, and which for Moscow is actually about $10,000 less than Lewiston, likely due to student influence and income levels. But our annual median household income is a little over $35,000, and Lewiston's a little over $45,000. Yet our water bills in Moscow are about $4 to $5 a month more than Lewiston pays. So DEQ has offered us the opportunity to submit a letter of interest to be considered to receive that lower interest rate for the Phase 2 funding. But they have clarified that they cannot modify the terms of Phase 1 that were offered in the agreement that we entered into back in 2014. So we cannot modify the interest rate for the first $4.3 million, but we do have the opportunity to potentially request a lower interest rate for the Phase 2 funding disbursement. Now, the amount of funding the state has at that lower interest rate is limited, and they do have a prioritization list based on community need. So it's not guaranteed that we will be able to receive that lower interest rate on that second $4.3 million disbursement. But they have offered to allow us to execute this loan offer to guarantee that we have the $4.3 million that we need to finish the projects underneath the existing terms and conditions of the loan, while we concurrently pursue an application for the disadvantaged community rate. If we were successful, that additional lower, 0.75% lesser interest would save us about $300,000, a little over that, over the life of the loan. So it is certainly something that we feel is worth pursuing. As the loan is on a reimbursement basis, that decision would be made next spring. The money, if we were able to secure disadvantaged community funding, it would be available beginning in July of next year, which is fine. We aren't going to really begin to incur large construction costs until we get to in the summer construction season next year. And so these loans are also on reimbursement basis. So if the city entered into the loan offers before you this evening, we would just wait, not make any requests for reimbursement of any expenses until we knew what the outcome of that loan was. If we were selected for the disadvantaged community loan, we would just terminate the second loan offer, and we would enter into a new loan agreement at the reduced rate. Accepting this will allow us to preserve about $2.5 million in water capital funding balance to fund those additional system needs. And that's accepting the Phase 2 loan, whether it's at the 2.25% or 1.5%. Accepting this will allow us to address those system needs and maintain water fund capital necessary to meet other system needs. The city's bond council has reviewed the loan offer, had just a few minor edits that were included in your packet this evening. DEQ is in the process of making those changes and is signing and mailing the final agreement to the city. Staff has prepared the resolution for the council's acceptance of the offer to support the completion of these necessary improvements, and we do recommend approval of the resolution and associated loan offer subject to the city's bond council's minor amendments that are included in the council's packet. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Bill, when we got the original loan in 2014 at 2.25, we thought that was an absolutely terrific rate, which it was. And it still is.
Still
It's
is.
a pretty doggone good rate. If we can get for 1.75, that'd be even better. And so, of course, we want to go after and see whatever we can get would be fair for us, but that's still a terrific rate for us. Questions for Bill? Okay. How would council like to proceed?
I would move to approve the DEQ Phase 2 Domestic Water System Improvement Loan Offer and the associated resolution contingent upon bond council's approval.
Second.
Okay.
I did have a bunch of questions at Public Works, which you answered all of them very well, or maybe it was Gary, I believe, or both. Is there any, when they look at this
Back.
interest rate, it's all or nothing. The whole amount is either going to be 2.5 or 2.25 or 1.5. They wouldn't say, well, we have enough that we could do half of it at this rate and half at another.
I don't know the
Okay.
answer to that question. It certainly is going to be a request for the entire 4.3 million at that 1.5%. I don't know, given what limits they may have to that funding, whether there is a scenario that we may encounter where they can offer some amount of the lower rate and the rest at the prior rate. I really don't know at this point in time.
Bill? Actually, I have a question as well.
ahead,
So, you're saying that considering the two different rates, so there's that 1.5 percentage to be disadvantaged, but you're saying there are other criteria, that that's not the only thing they look at, right?
That is the only criteria. I don't know if they look at relative burden. So we are just about that 2% of annual median household income. So I don't know if there's additional criteria they may evaluate in determining a community's level of need and relative priority for that low interest money. I'm sure most communities, if they knew they qualified, would be pursuing that. So I don't know the full range. I just know you have to meet that minimum threshold to even qualify.
Gotcha. So then everyone who qualifies is considered based on some other criteria.
They must evaluate relative need, relative financial demands of the system, maybe the deficiencies they're trying to address to evaluate and rank and score applicants.
Gotcha. So we'll just be in the pool.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we have a motion by Jim and a second by Brandy to approve the DEQ Phase 2 Domestic Water System Improvement Loan Offer and associated resolution with, based on the bond approval from the bond council. Everybody got that? Start with Ann.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you, Bill, very much. With that ends the regular things on our session, so we'll start into reports. Jim, and I'll start with you.
I have a report from the Historic Preservation Commission, met last week, and the historic sign for this building will be erected soon. It's been completed and was displayed at the meeting. It's very beautiful and shows pictures of the actual construction as it progressed through when this building was built, which is pretty unique for buildings in the state of Idaho at that time frame. So we're lucky to have that, and it should be a very durable sign. We also heard a report from the Unitarian Church across the street from the 1912 Center is going to tear down the yellow house next to it and expand the Unitarian Church, which may have some parking effects on us in the future, so I wanted everybody to be aware of that. And also this week, the Orchid Awards are Wednesday at 5:30 at the 1912 building, so if you want to participate in that, it'll be a good time to see the buildings that people are restoring to historic standards within the city. And that's all I have. Yeah.
Nothing for me.
Okay, Brandy.
That sign was put up today. I saw them putting it up. It's right outside City Hall.
Yep.
And it looks really good. Anyways. Okay, so, planning and zoning, last meeting, they had two, public hearings on things that they've been working on for a while. The public hearings are done, and there was no public present, no public input, but they were both related to ADU requirements and adjustments there. So you will now be permitted to have a separate electrical service to an ADU rather than previously you were required to be on the same service. And also, there will no longer be covered parking space off-street required. In the R1 zoning district. So that requirement has been eliminated. You still need the parking space, but it does not need to be covered. That's the change.
Okay.
Catherine.
Okay, well, I want to thank the community for coming out for the plastic collection day at the Recycle Center. I sent out a picture. We did make a bale that was almost 800 pounds, and the community was super excited to be able to do something with their plastic. There were people that had 2 years worth of plastic that came, and everybody wanted more ways to be able to do something positive for our community, and we're really happy to have the event. So I wanted to thank city staff for that, and hopefully we'll hear back. I know that Tim Davis and Amanda Bashaw and I think administration and are going to talk more about what would be next for the city. But we did collect 25 pounds at the school today, so you can still bring your plastic to Moscow Charter School. So thanks.
Well, thank you, Catherine. Okay, a couple of things I have. On 10/28, we had our Mayor's Youth Advisory Council meeting and talked about a number of different things, and the kids helped with trick-or-treating on this Halloween downtown. They got some other things in the works, hopefully a float for the holiday parade, so we're looking forward to that, and we'll see how that all comes out for us. On 10:30, I had an airport board meeting. We of course, we reviewed after the ribbon cutting, which was on 10/10, and talked about the taxiing runway that will be fixed this next year. That's the next project we're working on, and the future with a new terminal. I couldn't get the word out, thank you. I was gonna say hangar, but it's not an airport hangar, Jim, it's a terminal. But anyway, so we're working on that and looking forward with that. And that's really all the reports I have, but I do want to report, of course, tomorrow is the 5th of November, and that is Election Day, so everybody needs to go out and vote. 8 to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in two places, the Fairgrounds and Herc Center, so. And I'm not sure which one you need to possibly go to. I know mine is Fairgrounds, but outside of that, I don't know where everybody else is supposed to go. But anyway, tomorrow is vote day. Gary, do you have anything for us?
Just wanted, I think the city clerk would like to clarify precincts, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Precincts 2, 3, 4, and 17 are at the Herc. Everyone else is at the fairgrounds.
Okay. 2, 3, 4, and
Basically
15?
north,
Is that
north
17?
of 17. North Moscow's at the Herc. South Moscow's
Okay.
at the
Okay.
fairgrounds. There's a map on our website.
Thank you for that public service announcement. We do have our monthly breakfast meeting with the county, the university, and Moscow School District this Wednesday at the Quiet Room at the Wallace Center at U of I,
Okay.
It's 7 or,
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Back on the morning schedule.
yeah.
Okay.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 7:57, we're done, folks. Thank you very much.
The walk